This podcast is intended for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace therapeutic services of any kind. Please refer to the list of references provided if you need support.
Welcome to another session with Sara Cate and Ashley. I'm Ashley.
And I am Sara Cate.
Today, so if you listened to the last episode, it was about grief and it was pretty heavy. We enjoyed making it and we were so happy that we could welcome you guys into that space, but we thought we would follow it up with something a little bit less intense, a little less heavy, a little bit more exciting. And yeah, so we are going to talk about dreams, and not like the dreams you have at night, but the dreams you have for your life, and how do you find them, and what happens if you are, having a hard time deciphering like what your passions are, and what does it look like to really follow your dreams. And so that's where we're going to start. We are, Sara Cate is going to read a message that we got from someone because we thought it was a really good way to start about her specifically figuring out the dream and kind of the path that she took.
Yeah, I sent out a little snippet on my Instagram and just kind of opened it up, and it's my professional page where my clients, will follow me, and I'll post conversations on there sometimes just about different therapeutic, interests and techniques and that kind of thing to utilize. And so I had said, hey, we're going to do an episode on sessions on dreams and like losing sight of them, or maybe them changing, or maybe not even really knowing how to discern what your goals and your dreams and your ambitions are. And one of my dear sweet clients sent this, and I read it to Ashley, and we were both like, let's start there, because it felt like such a good launching point to begin the conversation around like, what does it mean to actually discover and know intimately what your hopes and goals and dreams and aspirations are for aspirations.
Yeah.
Okay. For our for your life.
There's your vocabulary.
Okay. So my sweet client wrote, I didn't necessarily have to come back to a dream, but I did spend the last few years discovering my dream. I was never the kid that knew what they wanted to be when they grew up. I spent most of my life doing what I was, in quotations, supposed to, and kind of on autopilot. Through years of self-work, care, and therapy, and learning about myself, I have a dream. I know I have a dream of being a healer and helping others discover themselves and know themselves more deeply. And so when Ashley and I read that, the first thing I think when we were talking about what we wanted to offer in this session today, the conversation of not really being given permission, potentially when we were younger, to explore alternative dreams or dreams that were maybe a little bit outside of the box. And, for a lot of us, we had to bargain, we had to perform, we had to be achievers, for whatever reason, to stay safe in our family dynamics or in our social dynamics. And sometimes that doesn't really, staying safe because you have to survive in your home environment doesn't really lend itself to let those dreams be expansive and exploratory and outside of the box. Ashley said something really, she was like, there were two paths. Well, she said it was like college was the choice after high school. There was no alternative encouragement for vocations, or like even me, I said it was in my high school, it was college or military. Those were kind of the two options. And so it just, we're sometimes so pushed down a very narrow road based off of a million different things, but sometimes we are just forced to kind of comply and do, and we follow in our parents' footsteps, or we completely change that path because maybe that's, we want to reroute our family's legacy. But the reality is, dreaming and creating a really wide life comes from a place of creativity. And if that creativity is not fostered in our young life for whatever reason, we can find ourselves, these adults, sometimes stuck and not knowing what our dreams actually are.
Totally. And, you think about school, from the time we go to school, play is taken away. Like, sure, we have recess, but it's 15 minutes. Or
Yeah.
if we're younger, we might get some like free time, but the creative expression we take away, music class, or you only get to go twice a week or whatever it is. And so we grow up in a system that has taken all of that, like, it's taken away more of the chances to explore the pure creativity. And we're kind of just all hurtled down the same path of like, you're good if you get good grades.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're given money if you get all A's, or you get a certain amount of money for every A, right? And so that teaches you from a very young age, if I get A's, I get money. And so that's super academic, right? And it doesn't allow for the expression anywhere else. And so when we're talking about alternative dreams, yes, like we can have dreams in very academic areas. You can have a dream to be a doctor or a scientist or whatever it is, but that's not all there is to dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can allow ourselves, like Sarah said, to dream big, what is that bigger dream? It's more about your job, which, it's like so interesting when you think about when you like meet somebody, you're like, oh, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one of the first questions is like, what's your job? And that like defines you. But like, what else is there to your life? What is the bigger dream and what is your bigger purpose?
Mm-hmm. And I when I was doing some traveling years and years ago, I heard this podcast, and it has like sat with me. But it was they were describing the story of this woman. And so when she was young and she was in school, she just like couldn't sit still. And the teacher was like, you need to go have her assessed. Right. And so the mom takes her to this, I think it was a psychologist. This mom takes her to a psychologist, and they spend some time together. And then he gets up and he says, I'm going to go speak to your mother now. You just stay in here and wait. And before he leaves, he turns on the radio or something. And the mother and him walk out, and she's kind of inquiring what they're doing. And he says, just look. And they watched her daughter in the room by herself through the window. And he was like, watch. And she just started dancing. She started spinning and twirling and moving around the room. And he said, you need to get this girl in a dance class. There's nothing wrong with her. Just because she can't sit still in her normal academic school. And this woman has gone on to, she was the choreographer for Cats and numerous other, like she became a world-renowned choreographer.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, we need these people in our lives, and these teachers or parents, if we're lucky enough, or somebody to foster uniqueness in us.
Yes.
Because we are unique beings, and to have that bigger dream and that wider life, outside of what I do 9 to 5 every day. I mean, damn it, we spend a lot of time in our jobs.
Yeah.
That is the majority of our week. And if we hate them, if it is sucking the life out of us, our vitality is missing.
Yeah.
And so I just think like, those who were lucky enough to be seen in their young years, and their creativity, and creativity can be engineering, creativity 100%. Can be science, creativity, exactly. Right? Like it can take so many different forms.
Yeah.
But what I think is the greater issue is that we're not directed home,
right,
to our own internal soul spirit connection to say, what is it that makes you feel alive when you're a kid? Right? We're handed a bunch of things, and then we're like Ashley was saying, we're kind of like shot down the same path to some degree. And if you're not, let's say you weren't an academic in school, that was equated to your goodness. That was equated. And so like, what is the self-perception you're going to have then if you don't learn in the same way? Which is like, I mean, I could go on a million tangents about how I just don't believe anything is actually neurotypical. I think it's a bullshit statement, but I think we're all unique, how we learn, how we create, how we move through the world, how we move our bodies through the world. Like we're such original to our own form. And I don't think that we have a lot of space often to come home and be like, what is it that I really want? And we're not asked that question. And so then we find ourselves now in our later adult lives being like, this isn't it, but I don't know what is.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I just had an interaction with a nurse actually a couple weeks ago, and I literally was like, she was put here to be this person to take care of me, like and every other patient that she sees, because she was so embodied, and she walked into the room and it was immediately calmer.
Mm.
She grounded everybody in the room. And I was like, and I talked to her about it afterwards. I was like, do you like what you do? And she was like, I can't imagine doing anything else. And so when we're talking about like Sara Cate said, we're talking about doctors or, engineers, scientists or whatever, that's their art. It's like their art is taking care of people in a way that makes whoever is being taken care of seen and heard and understood. And we need those people. And she could say that she can't imagine doing anything else. And if we can't say that, there's something missing. Because somebody else said to me, or maybe it's a quote, I don't know where I heard this, but it's like, who are you to deny the world your passion, right? And your gifts. And so it's like kind of a selfish thing if we're not chasing after what we really are here for. Like, who are we to deny? We were given this uniqueness for a reason. We were given these gifts for a very specific reason, and nobody else on this planet has the same gifts as you. And so who are we to deny that? And if we could foster that in people instead of saying, here's your test,
here's your box,
right? These are the jobs that will make you money. These are the jobs that are good. These are the jobs that are worthwhile. What is that?
Sad.
It sure is.
It sure
is.
Well, and I just, and so what do we do, right? What's the application here? What are we actually talking about? And because can we turn back time? No, we can't.
Well, maybe.
Share a moment.
Yeah.
But the microphone's here, surely. And so I'm gonna have to sing at one point. But we can't go back. We can't go back,
right,
and redo our childhood. Many of us would love to. However, I think that we can start practicing now, and this goes back, obviously, you'll hear me say this 1,000,001 times, to the sensations that we feel in our body when we feel most alive, when we feel that spark, that rise of energy, or that effervescence, or that push forward. I mean, in the previous episode, we did a somatic session around squirrels and Ashley's pants. And what we found out somatically was sitting there for her was this lack of initiation, this inability to mobilize, to activate, to do something. And so when we do feel that in our body, what does that look like?
Yeah.
What does it look like when you're so inspired by something? This is Sara in spades, but I was literally driving to my house this morning after I went to the grocery store, and the leaves have all just in Colorado just opened, and I got weepy. And I was just like, thank you, friends. I'm so happy you're back. And it was a real moment. But it actually moved me emotionally to tears, but it was like this widening in my chest, this expanding of my heart to see life and vitality back on the trees again, and just being able to honor how green it was, and how much life it's blooming here, and that sensation for me, that growing, that blooming, that alivening, it really fills me. And I think that's what I get when I work with clients.
Yeah.
When I see them come from a place of stuck, static, cold, sharp, hard, rigid, whatever however you want to kind of describe that freeze, or that lack of motivation or ambition or aliveness. And we start to do this work, and they notice sensations in their body, and they pay attention. And then they're near someone or something, or they go to a play, or they hear a song, or they go to a workshop, and they all of a sudden, you see their spark come back. That is the exact same thing I felt when I was looking at the leaves coming back to the trees. It's like that returning of life, of vitality into somebody. And so for me, I know I am in the right position. Yes, I sit in the hardest moments with people, and I hold space for the most intense tragedies of this life. And I am 100% there for that too, because I know that through this work, we can get to another side, and we can get somewhere else, and the healing process is possible. But for me, just I was a wanderer. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had to start to pay attention to when I felt most alive, and it was it wasn't something I knew. I didn't know somatic experiencing back when I decided I was going to become a therapist. I started out as a yoga teacher. And so I was working with people. And what I knew is like, it made me feel so good to see people feel good, to
Yeah.
see them feel connected to themselves.
Oh,
There goes the microphone. It wasn't, well placed. If something doesn't
we
fall
just lost our
in
microphone.
session, what is it really a session with us? No. If things don't fall apart. But yeah, so I was a wanderer. I didn't know, but I knew what I felt when I saw people feel more connected to themselves. And so I had to follow that. And, I was I guess I could be considered a late bloomer in a lot of ways, because I didn't start my career till quite a bit later. It was not right out of college. It was not
You
right
know
out.
what's so interesting about that though? What 18-year-old? Truly.
Seriously.
But like for real,
The
what
rest of their life.
18-year-old can make a decision? Well, I take that back, because there are some people, like the nurse probably knew
Yep.
for
Driven.
forever,
Mhm.
and she had the right set of circumstances to like put her there. I don't know when she actually started being a nurse, but she could have started she could have went right from high school to college. But I don't agree with the late bloomer thing, because
Mhm.
it was perfect, and we are so forced to have it our life figured out,
Mhm.
and how it's going to be set up as soon as we're done with high school. But like, if we don't even know what we're wanting to do, or have had an ability to explore, if where our true interests have been growing up have been stifled, of course what we pick to do right away isn't going to be right.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time how I decided to be a physical therapist, and I'm always like, I wish I had a cool story, but I don't. Like, I really don't. I honestly don't even remember. Like, I feel like the idea just came in my head one day, and I just like never changed my mind, because I didn't know I could change my mind.
Yeah.
And I remember being in PT school and being like, what the fuck am I doing here? And then I graduated, and I was still like, well, shit. Because now
I spent all this time and energy.
Yes. And now, okay, I have to be a physical therapist now. So like, that's what I'm going to do. And it's also so hard. I had just accomplished something huge, right? Like and I couldn't really even be super excited about it. Like people were like, but you're a doctor now. You have your doctorate. You did that. Like, that is something to be proud of. And I couldn't even really be super proud of it, because I was like, it's not right. It's not right within me. And then when you have this pressure, again, because that was a good job, I was a good person for going to this school. And like, I went high school, college, grad school. I didn't stop. I didn't take any time off. I just went. And then all of a sudden I found myself in this profession that I knew wasn't for me, but like, what was I supposed to do? And all of the messages I got was like, but it's so good. You have such a good job. I can't believe you don't like it. Yeah. And so when I started, it was in my first job. I loved my boss so much. And I had fun when I was like hanging out with my boss at work, or like my coworkers, but like the job itself, like, yes, I was helping people feel better in return from injury and all of that, but it wasn't, I would go home at night and be like, okay, like, what's next? But it was like, that was also when I started to feel myself gravitate towards women, and gravitate not towards just their physical body, but like everything else that made them up. And that is what made me then like further my education in women's health. And then that's what further brought me away from just treating the physical body to doing the energetics and the pelvic bowl healing and all of that. And it was like, so it took me a really long time. I've been a PT for over 12 years. I don't know, something. It's been a long time. And it's taken me this long to like actually truly step into what I want to do. And wait, did we talk about this in an episode? I don't know. Or maybe, I feel like, did I say I might have said in an episode, or maybe this was actually an Instagram post. I'm not actually sure, but I talked about how people thought I kept moving further and further away from the quote good thing. But really what I was doing was returning to myself. They thought it was perceived as a left hand turn, like just way off course to the outside world. And I had to get really strong and be so sure that that this was my life. And I was like done living for like what the quote good thing in like to other people's thoughts were.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a left-hand turn to them, and it was a return to me. And that is what ultimately kept me going. Has been easy? No. But has it been worth it? 100%. And I would do it a million times over.
Great. And I think that, so beautifully speaks to the process of like there has to be a death. There has to be
Yes.
a loss of the
Yeah.
idea of a life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what my client was speaking to even there. She's like, I just did what I was supposed to. And then through work and time and effort and self-exploration, I was able then to decide this is what I need to pursue. But like what has to die, and it's same for me. I had a pretty strong direction, and that was academics, college, get a good job, get a career, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't for me. I did it because I had to, and it was important to in a lot of ways, but it wasn't what was going to make my life full and whole. And so I to the same thing, I took some major left turns. I had always wanted to be a hairstylist. My grandmother, they called them beauty operators back then, and she was a beauty operator. And
What?
Isn't that
I really love that.
Yeah, they were called beauty operaters.
Oh, I
So,
really like
but she was a badass. She had her own salon. Like, no, she only had a 7th grade education. Like, she was an incredible woman. But like, I wanted to follow in her footsteps to some degree, and it wasn't super celebrated by my parents. That me going into a profession that was a vocation, wasn't the path. It wasn't the plan. It wasn't what was going to keep me safe. And at the same time, I did my yoga teacher training, and because I wanted to be a yoga teacher. And so like, I kind of like burst the bubble of the norm in my family's situation, and I sit here from a very privileged place of being like, I got to go to school. I was able to pursue that and do that. Like, I recognize that's not always a choice for everybody. And so, my journey had to kind of twist and wind, as anybody's will in their capacity. Sometimes it's school, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you're working in a field for 18 years because it's easiest to get a job and do that, right, to survive. So we all take these turns, but I came alive when I set all of those shoulds down. And I loved doing hair. It just made me sparkly in so many ways. It made me feel like I was creating the internal and external expression of what people felt internally. Like, I wanted to bring that internal beauty to the outside of the world, and share that. And then being a hairstylist, I was like, oh damn, I have to become a therapist, because hairstylists are therapists for sure. Through and through. And that's what made me realize. But it was a twisty turny roundabout way of getting here, and the reality of it is, when we come back to ourselves, as Ashley was saying, when you returned home to who you were, you could see how you wanted to do it. Right. Rather than looking at the how first of a dream. Right. We have to look at what we feel. And go back to the sensations, and like go back to that self-exploration of like, what places, what people, what things make you feel most alive when you are near it. And how do you know that? How do you feel that aliveness in your body?
So one of the things, like what she's talking about, is like that feeling in your body, and how do you know that? So I did, when I was in PT school, I took a trip to Guatemala, and I will never forget, this was like I just was like a really important, I was walking with my clothes on top of my head to go get them washed. And I was walking down this like teeny tiny sidewalk, and there was like flowers that were like coming out of this brick wall. And I was like, oh my, like Sara Cate just said about the leaves blooming here. I was like, oh my God, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And in that moment, I felt so expansive. And so like, when we talk about like, what does it feel? For me, it was like this expansion where like, I felt so light. And I was just so insanely happy. Like, there was just, if you looked at me, you would have known that I was feeling so joyful. And that has been that is where I was trying to get back to, because the reality is we are here not to suffer. We are here to like love the life that we live. It doesn't mean that it's always easy, but we're not here just to suffer and suffer and suffer. Like sometimes we're told, right? And so for me, returning home was like, where can I find that joy? What is going to make me feel so alive that if you look at me, you know that I'm experiencing joy? And, you know, again, like we're going to find like the road is not just straight. It's up and down and it twists and turns. And every twist and turn gives you more information of like, oh, that wasn't it. Or like, oop, yep, that was part of it. Like, I need more of that. You know, it's all information that you're gaining to figure out where it is. Where is home for you?
Yeah. Right. And I think, I mean, our next episode, we're going to be talking about self-abandonment. And we were kind of prepping for these two things today together. And it felt like a really important follow-up to this episode, because I do think that what we are taught early on is to self-abandon. We are taught to leave the self behind and conform. Or if we're not taught that, because there's an expectation of who we're supposed to be in the world, then then it could also be out of survival. Right? Like I can't have feelings, sensations, emotions because it is not safe in the environment that I'm in. So I have to shut the parts of me that are a part of my vitality and my intuition and my knowing down. I have to lock them away because they are not able to exist with me in this life. And what I so often am doing with my clients is that coming home and that process of getting to know your sensations. And this is why we've really started this podcast, is to create the invitation to get to know who you are, to rehome, to come back, to reintegrate into your own body and to connect with your own being, to hear it, to trust it, to sense it, to know it. So that way, when you are making choices in your life as this adult, they're coming from that place of you knowing this is for me and from me, not based off of what I had to do or how I had to be or how I had to exist, right? This is the work that can help us knowing our bodies, learning our bodies. And it's a scary process. It can be very scary when we've had to shut those parts down, but like, our dreams will unfold in front of us. Our directions will unfold in front of us when we follow our sensation, because our brain is going to stay logical. It's going to stay reasonable as best it can to say, do this. That's not safe. That's not good. Too outside the box. But our body is like, I need something more. Like, give me something that makes me feel alive and excited and open, you know? And so listening and really renegotiating that relationship that we have to ourselves is such a big key in establishing and chasing dreams that we have and ambitions that we have in this lifetime.
So one of the things that I like to, a lot of my clients will get a lot out of this exercise, because it's like, well, cool guys, great, but how do I start to do this, right? And dreaming is a muscle that you have to like practice using. Like, it's not going to just be like, oh, all of a sudden you know exactly what all of your dreams are. And so just ask yourself, what would an ideal day look like? And sometimes what'll happen is you'll be able to like, and I like when I say this, like think about like as specific as you can be. Like, what color are the sheets that you wake up on? What does your room look like if you were like in the ideal space? Or maybe it's like on the beach and like and over the ocean.
That'd be nice.
What is those called? Cabins over the ocean?
I mean,
rooms,
no.
whatever. Not a cabin.
Cabins are here in the mountains.
You're right.
Cabins over the ocean.
But you know, the little houses over the ocean.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. And tune in to what parts of the day you can really quickly identify. Because sometimes this is what'll happen. Sometimes you can be like, oh, this would be my dream morning. And then you have from the hours of whatever, 10 to 5 p.m. Then you're like, I don't know what the hell I would do.
Mhm.
Okay, don't force yourself to like sit there and try to figure it out. Maybe you can think of what your ideal activities would be.
Mhm.
Like you would love to be able to go for a hike, or you would love to be able to go to the beach, or you would love to be able to go to the grocery store and get all the fresh produce and make a really yummy, delicious home cooked meal for your family.
Mhm.
Like there might just be activities, but it's an exercise to help open up your brain to thinking like that,
Mhm.
because we don't do that. And sometimes I've done this exercise many times. And sometimes I write out like a bulleted list. And sometimes I write 5 or 6 pages because it just comes and comes and comes and comes and comes. But the more you practice, the more you're going to be let in to like, okay, now I really can dream about like, I've got my morning figured out. And now like, this is what I would really love to do if I were working or if I were having meetings throughout the day. And it doesn't mean you have to know exactly what that is. It could be like, I have a dream that from the hours of 10 to 5, I'm helping people. And that could be it.
Mhm.
That's amazing. That's great. If that's the information you get, again, that's another little clue that you
Mhm.
can pay attention to. And then your brain is going to get used to, and your body is going to get used to going there, going to those sensations. But when
Mhm.
you think about like unrest and unhappiness, we'll just use in terms of career. Like if you're like
Uh-huh.
super unhappy, and then all the way over here on the other end of the spectrum is like your dream job and you're so joyful and you like can't wait to go there every day, to make this huge jump from one side to the other, it's not gonna work so well with your nervous system. It's too much. It's
Mhm.
too much. So you have to kind of like titrate yourself along that line.
Mhm.
Let your body get used to feeling those sensations of joy. Let your body get used to feeling like, oh, that really did make me come alive when I was 5. That feels really good. Don't try to force to go all the way there. Does that make sense?
100%.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because to your point, you can't, if this is not a muscle you have used, if this is not something that has been available to you, expansion, like let's say maybe you've had to live in more constriction in your life, trying to just completely blow the lid off and blow it wide open will be way too alarming
Yeah.
for your nervous system.
Yeah.
It will be like, this is too much information. I'm overwhelmed.
Mhm.
It floods us. So
Mhm.
I love what you're saying there, Ashley, because it is so much about pacing and titration of, here's ideas that I have, here's thoughts that I have. I go into that sensation a little bit. I enjoy the way that my heart lifts. I enjoy the way that my shoulders settle down my back, or I enjoy the way that I feel my stomach settle, right? We go in for a little bit, we notice, and then we come back out. Yep. And then here I am in my life, but it isn't to just try to like throw ourselves into on the opposite end of the spectrum isn't actually sustainable. It will be too overwhelming. But to begin to explore these sensations, what I would call the comfortable or the pleasurable sensations that we have in our body, right? Not good, bad. We try to stay away from that because then we'll just automatically try to inherently avoid the bad ones. So if we say comfortable, uncomfortable, pleasurable, not so much, not enjoyable, whatever you want to say. But if we start to really allow those pleasurable, comfortable sensations to become known to us, to become more familiar to us slowly, then we establish that foundation of like, oh, I can keep going towards this thing that does make me feel so incredible. And then there's just like a shit ton of fear and doubt and worth that is going to come up when we start to dream. And Ashley and I have had it. We talked about it in episode 0, the imposter syndrome, but like, there's all that will come with this, right? And like, we aren't believers like everything's fluffy and wonderful when you decide that you're going to open yourself up to dreaming. It is not going to be easy, but we feel so passionate about it because I think she and I have gotten knocked around a lot in the sense of like, why are you doing that? You shouldn't do that. That's crazy. What is that? And we've created some pretty unique, weird careers for ourselves that to me doesn't feel like a career. We're recording this podcast on a Saturday, and it wasn't like anything for Ashley and I to be like, yeah, we'll spend a couple hours doing that on Saturday because we love it. And we want to talk about this stuff. And
you made us breakfast. So
because to my lady some
So
food.
like, of course I was.
Of course she was coming over.
Of course I was coming. I couldn't get here fast enough.
But yeah, like, my hope is that, as we can talk about the heavier things, grief and imposter syndrome and all of these really difficult things, that we can also have these conversations here in this space to help ignite or support or encourage you to make just one slight adjustment to the thoughts that you have in a day, and to the ideas that you think about in a day, right? Like, and no, sometimes it's going to be a glacial pace to get to a different place. And sometimes it takes a hell of a lot of time and a hell of a lot of work and a hell of a lot of healing. And when I this is true for me in my life. I mean, if I at 21 would have like thought about how long my life was going to take me to get to 38, I probably wouldn't have made any changes. Thank God I didn't know the trajectory. But now at 38, I'm like, all of that time was worth it. Every single moment, every single heartache, every single loss, every single tragedy, trauma, it has brought me to this moment, to be here in this tent right now with you, And so if we stop, but we just have to start. We have to start believing and trusting that our own body and our own being know more than everybody fucking else on this planet.
Yes. That's it. That is
you know yourself. And if you don't, welcome home.
Yeah.
Let's get to know it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think it's just
Mike.
Seriously. Well, our mic is already dropped.
So maybe we should have stopped then when it fell. Oh God.
And I wish that we all had somebody in our life that really was there to provide us the encouragement and the permission and the space, a healthy and supportive space that would have really just nourished these like innate talents and this innate knowledge that we have in our body. And even if you didn't have that, you have it within you. You have that inner knowing. And like Sara Cate said, like, this is it. Like, this is welcome home. And if you need the permission, if you need the encouragement, like, here it is. We are here. That's why we are doing
That's why we're doing it. And I just got goosebumps.
Oh, me too, actually. And
okay, now we're being fluffy.
Yeah. Even though, like I said, even though I was sitting in PT school on the day that I graduated, I was like, God damn it. Like, what did I just do? It truly brought me here. And even though I had to like fight my way through the, like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? From my colleagues, from every separate little space in my life. So like some people don't even still understand. Some people don't even know like what I do. Sometimes I don't know what I do, but but even with all of that, it is still worth it when you come to the other side and you come home, because that feeling of coming home is better than anything you could imagine. And it is worth it. You just have to keep going.
Just keep swimming.
Here she goes again with the swimming. That's not the beat, I don't think.
Right? There's a beat?
Well, like the cadence.
Anyway. Oh, bless.
Sara Cate sings Whitney Houston or Cher or now Dory. Okay. I love it though.
God bless it. I don't know why we're here. Well, anyways. I'm glad we're talking about this week. I think it was a nice little foray into to kind of some other territory, but it's important. Like, our sensations are comfortable, they are uncomfortable, and Ashley and I are so committed to helping people learn and understand what their sensations are, so that way all of these things come to fruition for you through you knowing you.
Yeah.
And and we hope that this conversation today has maybe illuminated something in you, that maybe a spark that hadn't been attended or noticed in a while might kind of reignite, or might catch your attention or your curiosity. But know that what you are feeling And as you learn what you are feeling, it is, as Ashley says, oftentimes perfect. It's yours, right? And there's ownership that gets to come with you knowing what you feel in your body and the direction that you want to take. And that ownership and that agency is paramount to living this one, as Mary Oliver says, one wild and precious life.
Yeah.
So we hope that today you got a little nudge of inspiration to go live that wild and precious life.
See you next time.